Is his name Wee Little Chonky?
Where were you?
Hello and welcome to Conversations with Benjamin Boyce. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's guest is Exulansic, who is a TikTok user, a Twitter user, and a YouTube user. She's been diving deep into the gender madness, and we have a fun conversation. And I get to meet her main man, the Maine Coon. Jeez. That is like a body pillow.
Yeah.
How heavy?
He's like 19 pounds, and he's not fat, the vet says. He's just huge.
Oh, jeez.
He's got giant paws. Look at how big those paws are.
Oh, wow.
They're
beautiful. Webbed? Beautiful.
Yeah, his paws are webbed.
How old is he?
He might be mixed also with a Norwegian forest, which are very similar. He's 10.
Oh, wow.
And Norwegian forests swim. I think Maine Coons might also swim.
How old do they generally last before the matriarchy comes after them?
Why would the matriarchy come after?
Because they go after everything with an average expected lifespan, and then they take it out.
Right.
It's like you're the Moira or the Fates, just making sure that average lifespan, massaging it to your...
Like, he's a symbol of feminism. He's my giant cat.
Yeah, you could wear him as a hat. The cat in the hat. And then go march on Washington. They probably won't let TERFs march on Washington. You guys are domestic terrorists. Oh, wow.
Look at this. Where the same thing got split into two. What?
Yeah, like through a prism. Now we're on the other side of the rainbow. Or we are become rainbow.
I'm just glad that there's no like creeping trans flag on my hair.
Oh yeah, I want a fist
like
kind of just like
flag.
penetrating me like at random through screen left. Maybe penetrating wasn't
correct. For that, I think.
Do they? You would know. You're up to date on all the crazy conditions.
I would. It's secret knowledge though.
Have you found anything novel on the internet since we last spoke that you've been inflamed by?
Not like an hour ago, I was watching something about androsexuality and gynosexuality, and how gynosexuality is supposed to encompass, it's supposed to be attracted to women, but also attracted to genitals. But they're also mad that the word gynosexual sounds like it refers to genitals. Like, they're just so confused and hilarious. They're just sitting there like, why are you trying to do this? What is the goal here?
How many people were involved in this? Was it just a monologue?
This one was a monologue. Oh, and then earlier, so I'm working on one where I'm looking at gender therapists. I was going to call it Judith Sputlers. So they're
Madame.
But they're so bad. They're worse than they're as bad as the surgeons almost. I don't know who's. It was a trip to listen to them talking, including one where it was a mock session where somebody was talking about how one of the exact words were, "But I don't want to be a lesbian. I want a real relationship, a male-female relationship." And this is their model of how a gender therapy session would go, like a mock. I believe both of them were therapists, like mocking it up. It's just like, and there was no like pushback against that. So anyway. And
were they both females?
Yes. In the exchange.
What's your take on this push from females, from organizations for females, but also from females for this language that erases the word woman?
I do think that there's a lot of women that have not dealt with the fact that that are members of a stigmatized class and have some trauma related to that, and they don't want to deal with that fundamentally, and so they're trying to flee the body, flee the stigma by fleeing femaleness, and you can't do that. So all they're doing is worsening the stigma. because stigmatized topics, you don't bring them up. So they're trying to stigmatize certain topics so that they're not brought up in order to make themselves feel less stigmatized by the topic. But unfortunately, everybody knows who the women are. So they don't actually get to flee the stigma. They just get to pretend it's not there. And maybe it doesn't affect them that much because they're in a very privileged position.
And then they hand over woman to males who want to identify or even claim that they are more woman than woman because they had to manifest it. They had to actually work through and change themselves to fit that thing. So they've created, if insofar as the people are following your path that you're describing of fleeing stigmatization, they create a taboo, which is kind of like this blind spot that they can't poke into. But then that just gets filled with other people just kind of run in and then co-opt that. But it seems asymmetrical because the trans man who is being served by this non-woman specific, uterus haver terminology, there's something else going on there where they're becoming men of some flavor, shape, or form.
I've come across trans men who don't like the language of uterus haver because it reminds them that they're seen as having uteruses, which makes them feel like they're female, which brings up their dysphoria. There's no setting that wins, so it's just them trying to find the setting that wins, but it's not there. So they are going to consistently disagree, but there is an attempt to redefine being a woman in terms of appearance, and that gives women kind of an opt-in or opt-out option. They don't have to be members of the stigmatized class unless they actually want to put forth the effort. Meanwhile, the people who are putting forth the effort must want to be in the stigmatized class. So it's kind of a way of making the world just again. Just world theory. Now the only people who are on the receiving end of oppression want to be. As long as we give people an out, it's okay. We don't need to change the larger social dynamic. The feminine people can still be kept down. We just have to make sure only the people who want to be kept down get in that position and look that way.
It doesn't seem that people are opting into, well, insofar as we remove the people who are dealing with gender dysphoria and using medical means and also incorporating a lot of therapy into that, people who are going down a more thoughtful path towards this. If we just kind of focus on the ideologues, it seems like the people, the trans rights activists, the radical trans rights activists who are going from male to female, well, I guess one writes about the female as this object of sexual penetration. So I guess there is a fetishization of the underdoggedness of the female, but it seems like it's also seen as an empowered class. To be a woman is to actually be powerful and in this weird way of looking at the woman as attractive, you get this attractiveness to you that you didn't have before as a man, and then society then calls you beautiful and praises you for that.
Yeah, there's a huge reason for people to be jumping into this. There's a lot of positive attention and feedback that you're getting. The whole medical field is catering to you. Politics are catering to you. There's just so much social pressure against, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Does this seem, have you thought about this at all? It's and especially for the teenagers, the kids, and parents. I have something coming out tomorrow. What was it? What did I title it? It's about the homogenderality. So it's got this person that among many other things has a video talking to parents about how children are perceptive and they're just trying to follow themselves, and we just need to stand back and let them take the lead. No, that's abdication of children. That's abandonment. That is role reversal. That is not the logic of somebody who understands a healthy adult-child dynamic. It's just not.
Well, and it's also not said, but what actually happens is that the parents step back and then social media takes over. The kid's still going to look up to something, and they're not going to just form gender out of like the primordial consciousness of their lived experience. They're going to find a language that facilitates that.
Yeah, they're coming of age in a particular context, and they are going to have to undo the however that affects their psyches, which to an extent I don't have insight into because I'm not from that generation, and I do believe even the people who are deep in it now, the young people, that they're at least many of them will come out of it, will reason their way out of it, if not most. But the question is how many of them will be sterilized in the process. Can you imagine if we were letting kids go to lobotomy therapists to decide if lobotomy was right for them? And we all just took that as like, oh, well, that's reasonable. They're just there to help. They're just there to be understanding. They're not there to guide. Well, the whole structure implies that the choice is valid. The structure of going to gender therapy makes making this choice the subject of every session. It's how obsessing and obsessing and obsessing and obsessing until you make the compulsive act. I was just watching several of these.
I can see just in I don't know if it could be seen as satire anymore because it's plausible. It might be too plausible, but it seems implausible enough to still
satire.
Be within satire. Okay, so we're beyond satire anyways. But
except for cis hair, I think I haven't gotten cis hair yet. I have my trans hair, and then underneath I have my cis head.
Oh, okay. Which is your authentic head, though?
Fibers. There's a bimodally distributed spectrum. I have the artificial fibers up here, and I have the cis fibers underneath. It's a spectrum.
And they have
so much overlap.
What you are performing is the reality and is your identity. It doesn't matter which is the hair.
This is my gender identity.
Yeah.
I'm also dressed as a gender therapist.
Is this how they do it? Okay.
Just like a rainbow. No. I assume some of them are. There's definitely at least one. She presents herself as a doctor on TikTok, but she every single video of hers has rainbow hair, so it's an homage to her.
If we made the argument, or we imagined a society in which the intellect was seen as oppressive, one IQ is let's just say IQ is a social construct. What? I
feel like that was wasn't that a short story by the same guy who did Fahrenheit 451 where they
Harrison
had like
Bergeron? I think that's Vonnegut did Bergeron.
With the headphones that just.
And to upgrade that here, we start with IQ is a social construct. Intellect is actually oppressive because it creates all these oppressive systems. Therefore, if you opt out of intellect through a procedure in which we will put this needle up your nose and swirl your pineal gland or whatever it is they swirl up there, you'll be free. That's a liberatory process.
And they might have longer. So the thing is that they will tell us that you can see on an MRI somehow these different brain areas being, this person has a female brain, this person has a male brain. So if we know what the areas are that are causing the problem, why can't we go in and fix it? Why won't lobotomy work? Can someone explain that to me? Nobody ever wants to, but why wouldn't it work? Why can't we go in and shave down the parts that are too big and maybe, inject some growth hormones targeted into the areas that are too small? We know what those areas are, right? We know so much about the brain. We totally have this nailed down. Let's do it. We'll just nail
electroshock therapy too could probably do it. To just rewire the thing.
That's so much more generalized though.
Oh, okay.
We want something targeted. We want it to be like epilepsy surgery, where we find exactly where the gender gremlin is lying, and we just cut it out, and the rest of their brain is fine. And then, unlike lobotomy in general they go on and live a relatively normal life, and now they're cured.
Gender is a polyp in the brain.
Isn't it? If the problem is a brain-body mismatch, why are we only considering radically changing the body? Why?
It's easier, and everybody can see it. Nobody can see the brain. Yeah,
basically,
right.
It's something they can control. They can control it. So that's why they want to do the changes there. Doesn't matter what the outcomes are on either direction. They want to be able to see it and control it.
You said that people are going to reason their way out of it. Is it fair to say that you are beginning a compendium of reasoning, maybe? The little ladder that you're dangling into the abyss?
Yeah, I hope so, because I'm trying to get as many angles as I can so you can just watch it and just be like, yeah, no, nothing about this is good. There's very little here that could possibly be better in context. especially Dr. Boobs Grow Back Crane. I don't know if you saw that clip.
No, what happened?
Dr. Curtis Crane out in the Crane Center for transgender surgery. I forget the second part's in the name, but the whole clinic is just transgender surgery. It's him and a bunch of other surgeons. And he was in a Facebook Live, and somebody, possibly a young girl, asked him whether it's possible for breasts to grow back after a double mastectomy. And his response was, no. Well, it depends. It depends. I have seen it a couple times. It was if you gain too much weight. And it was like, wow, I would like to see the quid pro quo on that one. Trading liposuction for sexual favors from some of these girls on the lie that maybe their boobs are going to grow back is my theory there. Otherwise, I don't know why he would have said that. I can't think of one good reason to say that.
Was he saying that moobs are basically boobs and you can grow them as long as you figure out how to distribute your fat and gain a bunch?
Yeah, not only are moobs boobs, moobs grow on double mastectomy chests that have been scarred to the chest. That doesn't really often happen. I suppose it could, but I can't imagine that it would look anything like breasts. But for a young girl who's considering getting a double mastectomy, like, she's not going to know any better. And here she's being told that they grow back, and she's not the only gender surgeon that I found that does that has said that. And nor am I the only one who's found them. It's something that the field is regularly telling these kids.
That puberty blockers are reversible or have no long-lasting damage, and probably, I'm sure nobody's said that your penis will grow back.
I don't think, I haven't seen penis grow back. I have seen them refer to bottom growth, so-called bottom growth, which is when the clitoris becomes masculinized, the part that is visible can become more visible. Excuse me. Turn my phone off. So that I've seen them refer to that as their dick growing.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen one saying that will grow back. The ignorance of the structure and function of the clitoris among this crowd too is really horrifying, given that they are selling vaginectomies to girls. So and they're burying their clitoris. That's how that's their terms. They say, we recommend that we often bury the clitoris, but we'll help you decide if that makes sense, was a quote. It was just like, wow, I don't think I want them helping my mentally ill relative decide if burying the clitoris makes sense. I just don't. Somebody get Ann Ethel away. She had a stroke last year. She's not really all there.
So so it's basically female genital mutilation with extra ideological steps.
Yeah, and it's horrifying.
Okay, so we understand
they're soldering arm nerves to clitoris nerves, which likely effectively amputates the clitoris if they're soldering it to the dorsal nerve of the clitoris. And these girls might have been puberty suppressed. They have no idea what a sexual sensation is, or they're very alienated from their bodies when this happens. It's horrifying. Well, they take an arm nerve, a nerve out of your physical arm. They take the nerve, and then they take a little soldering iron, basically, and they solder it to the nerve that feeds this primary sensory organ in female genitals. And this gives sensation to the phalloplasty at the cost of clitoral sensation.
So it extends the nerve through the tube that they've created. So
yeah, it replaces a clitoris with a skin tube.
Okay.
So whatever you can feel on your arm, that's more or less what you're going to feel.
Okay.
In that new hookup. And the question is, if they're severing that nerve when they do the soldering or damaging it, then that's it for future sexual sensation.
And this is happening in pubescent, prepubescent, or teen girls?
Excuse me. I have seen them refer to phalloplasties happening in minors. Some of these doctors saying that it's usually done once they're 18. I have several firsthand and other sources about how they're getting mastectomies prior to 18, how they're starting puberty blockers in middle school, testosterone in middle school. And those drug regimens, of course, horribly damage their bones irreversibly. especially the younger they're given and the longer they're given for. And these doctors are telling parents and families that they can be on it for years. For years. For adult women, it's recommended 6 months for endometriosis. And even then, it can cause horrifying side effects. And they're telling 11-year-olds they can be on it for 3 years. And it gets lower and lower. Now some of the recommendations are 8. 8. He wanted to wear the wrong swimsuit at 5, and he still wanted to wear it in 3rd grade. Well, you know what? Castrate him. So yeah, that's a paradigm. Jazz Jennings was 17. Jazz Jennings was 17 when he got the vaginoplasty. So that's at least.
And there's problems with that because they were on puberty suppressant drugs, correct, or cross-sex hormones, yeah. So they didn't have enough to work with.
Yeah, and his surgeon, Dr. Marcy Bowers, very recently, a few weeks ago, told Abigail Schreier, who wrote the book Irreversible Damage, that perhaps puberty blockers were a mistake. Maybe we might have been a little bit too optimistic about that. And then in the episode where everything was becoming, I think they were on their 3rd or 4th attempt to fix Jazz's unfixable body at that point. And he actually referred to it as playing whack-a-mole. So it's like playing whack-a-mole.
The Jazz or the doctor?
The doctor.
Okay.
Oh, all these predictable problems happen. Whoop, whoop. It's his body. You don't play whack-a-mole in children's bodies. This is why you don't do that. That's why you don't just try and mess around, see what'll happen. He belongs in jail.
Wasn't it the New York Times said that they didn't want to publish his piece, or another gender surgeon? Yeah, I remember that in Abigail's write-up.
I don't know about that. I know that he's already faced some blowback about being transphobic. This transgender surgeon. It's like, yeah, even he can see the actually, I think there was probably some sort of negotiated settlement involved there. I can't imagine he did that because he's a good person. Because he's not. He also joked about being a child pornographer while photographing Jazz.
On TBS.
On TV.
Yeah.
That then aired. It's unreal. And it's November 30th. Season 7 starts.
Are you looking forward to it? Do you guys have watch parties?
Well, there will be a watch party. You'll know. Does that count as looking forward to? I'm just... The promos are so awful. Like he can barely support his own weight running around. It's like hold on to his family. Yeah, the one where they're running around in a park. He's like in between 2 people, and then they're just running as a pack to hide the fact that he's like physically holding on to people. I've other ones where he's tried to prove he has range of motion. He clearly doesn't have range of motion. He's been puberty suppressed since he was 11. We know what that does. I can't imagine. We know that he didn't want to play sports. They had to really push him to play sports. I just imagine his bones hurt. And I imagine that's playing a role in obesity too, because the bone cells, the osteoblasts and the adipocytes are the same stem cell layer. So they kind of compete to be reproduced. But if his bones never mineralized, maybe he doesn't need as many. So there's more fat cells that can be made. I don't fully know. Because obviously he's been through a lot of trauma too, but
how long does that show run?
It's season 7, so he's a couple years younger than me. No, he's actually, I take that back. He's quite a bit younger. He was born in 2000, so he would have been 11 in 2011. So I believe that the show must have started around then. It wasn't his first time on TV though. He was on Barbara Walters when he was like 5, and everyone was amazed that there was this one first child ever who had reached for the wrong toy, and it was international news. Australia came and checked it out too another time. And it's just looking back, it's like who really bought into this idea that this was some unusual thing that had never happened before that was newsworthy? You
don't think it was so spontaneous then?
No, No, I think it was all coordinated, and I think anybody involved in that show or in that whole process needs to be investigated, including Barbara Walters. She clearly knows better. She's been around the block. Why was she participating? Over many years. Why was she participating? I just want her to have to answer that publicly.
Why do any of them participate?
Yeah. Exactly. Most of TLC, with the exception of perhaps the janitor, should also have to answer a lot of questions. You know, and there are a lot of people that belong in jail. I don't know exactly which ones, other than Dr. Child Pornographer. And clearly, he's on video doing it, so it's not like there's, and by it I mean mutilating a child's genitals unnecessarily. So if that doesn't lead to consequences, then we're lost as a culture. We're completely lost.
You came from a different point of view, though. You were in the trans community for a while.
I was. I did not ever think that that was acceptable. The puberty blockers for kids. I remember being exposed to the idea and contemplating how interesting that would be if that was actually reasonable. I didn't know anything about it though, and it was very new. They weren't, to my knowledge. This would have been actually the year that they started Jazz on the puberty blockers. That would have been the same year, so maybe there was a bit of a blitz, and that's why I was exposed to it at that time. I was at Cal. I was still in a gender women's studies program. I hadn't yet seen my friends go down that path and seen what it did to them. So
it was
yeah.
a bunch of promise and possibility then, that medical transition seemed to be a positive thing from your point of view, or from the point of view of that community that seems kind of small and West Coasty, so pretty far on the progressive track. So once it's contained, and from that point of view, it was kind of contained, it seems like, and then it went national, international, and the consequences became radically different.
Yeah. It was. I mean, I just don't know that it started there and then spread. It just seems so. Perhaps that's the case, but it just seems like it wouldn't have gotten so popular so far. But maybe that's just the age we're in, where local periods of mass hysteria and moral panics can actually become so big. But clearly, there's a lot of moneyed interest involved here. So we do have to question about what role that played. When you're young, you're just coming out of puberty. It's been stressful. You have some sort of other underlying issues, and you're looking for a reason why you feel like you don't make sense as a young person. And this promise that maybe future generations might be spared the discomfort you had. You're being told by authority figures that the reason that your puberty was so awful is because you are actually this other thing, and you were meant to have the other puberty. And all these other pieces of the religious doctrine that is predominating.
But at one point, you were in, at least to a certain extent, a community that accepted trans.
Yeah.
So what were the things that began to? How did you start to remove yourself or rethink that position, and what still holds up now about the trans community in your mind?
A big part of it is that I sought and received high quality, sustained mental health care, and during that process, as well as leaving that community and going to a graduate school that was very much not related to gender studies or involved in that at all. I healed to the point where I didn't need the placebo of trying to look a certain way every day. And so I stopped caring so much, and it just as I stopped carrying, and also I grew my hair out for unrelated reasons. And then once I started looking out group, I started getting people that have known me for years, who I might have even introduced to it, talking to me like I'm new in town, and giving me the rundown if I appeared to step out of line, in ways that would have been tolerated when I looked different. And so it made me realize, oh, this is just an appearance-based subculture. This isn't actually a sincere identity category that I can belong to in a secure fashion.
And that policing of behavior was to make up for the fact that it was so tenuous, this identity group. Like everybody has to believe this,
Yeah,
or
it's
else
a religious subculture based, a lot of which is centered around people who are very predisposed to feel rejected and rejectable. And so a lot of it is like this agreement that, okay, well, we're on the same team. We can tell that you and I are in the same team because we look this way. You can trust me, I can trust you. It's an insular religious community that forms. And yeah, I don't know if that fully answered.
Being that you found that through gender and women's studies, to what's the pedigree there? How did within, I guess, academic feminism, or somewhere academic feminism went into gender, or somehow imported ideas through feminism, or smuggled it into and out of this idea of woman?
Well, they combine the majors. Berkeley combines the majors. You can't be a women's studies major unless you explore gender.
Oh, okay. So there's no such thing.
I did not like it at the time.
You didn't like it then. Why did you want to be with the genders, or you want to be with the women? Studying wise,
I came into it identifying as radical feminist and wanting to study women's statistics. Basically, I wanted to know about the actual status of women as a sex class. Mm-hmm. And while you have this kind of required exposure to gender theory, which again just kind of says women equals like sexuality in a way. Not it's not that we are a sex class; we are the sex class. Is the distinction there? If that makes sense. We're the ones that are associated with the body, and with gender, whereas there's no really reason why those would need to be the same. Women aren't more gendered than men. But combining them plays into the idea that we are, which is classic misogyny and classic bioessentialism, that women are more gendered than men, that we are a special case of men, or we are a subtype of human that is unlike normal human. There's normal, and then there's female. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't a fan about that. But then over time, your social group is buying into that. You start like thinking about it. You're exposed to this and that. You're required to learn it. So your professors are telling you this is reasonable, and it just social contagion kind of takes over. But I've also mentioned that I had an underlying experience of gender dysphoria, which overlaps with this trans identification. They're not the same, but it did seem to make sense. So that plus everybody else seemed to be going along with it, plus my own therapy.
So you identified as trans, or as a trans man, or what?
Trans man / transmasculine.
Okay, transmasculine.
And the idea is that at the time, the idea was that within the sex there are different genders, and that's kind of like what sex isn't gender means. Now it means something weird, like that your sex can be in conflict with your body, which or the sex of your soul rather. Mm-hmm.
And is that rooted in some sort of
woman?
Like archetypal? Is that rooted in some sort of archetypal paean of gods and goddesses that imprint themselves upon the human soul, and like whether you're a Minerva,
definitely,
or a Venus kind of thing?
I've been doing a series called The Church of the Non-Binaries the last few weeks, and it looks at them and their understanding of the non-binary pantheon. And how they are attempting to absorb trans-classic as two of their many gods, meaning the man and woman gender identities. And then they have all these other gender identities, and your gender identities can move around, so you can catch a body feeding day to day. or be abandoned as an empty temple by one and become a gender. So it is very much a religious pantheon. You're supposed to kind of try to commune with your gender identity to figure out whether you've got gender flux, do you have man, do you have demi-boy, do you have this or that, and it is just a polytheistic pantheon and personal icon.
Are there codified ways of? Are there codified rituals yet that you've seen? Like you said that you kind of pray to it, but is there like even just a magic 8-ball that you have that helps you divine this stuff, or some magic sticks that you throw on the ground and then open up a big book of changes of gender, and then you're like, okay, this is what the sticks are telling me.
You're giving me ideas for merch. I already have enough ideas for merch. What are those, like swinging crystals, but it's like 1,000 gender identities? I haven't seen that. They have a lot of rites, though, R-I-T-E-S, one of which is the holy rite of the first haircut after you decide to transition, which is like a baptism. Doesn't matter how your hair is getting cut. It's the first haircut. Or I guess for trans women they grow their hair out, so it's not as dramatic. But putting on the dress would probably be their symbol. Mm-hmm. So we're people like Jazz are about creating what designating certain children as deities and then worshiping them as deities is not uncommon, not at all unheard of in polytheistic religions. Mm-hmm. There's
and
lots
sacrificing
of
them too.
Child deity, yeah, that too. I have another shorter series called The Children of Canaan, where I'm just kind of compiling all these children who are like, I'm going on hormone blockers, yay! It's just dark.
If it's so dark and horrific and crazy, how do you approach it with sanity and humor and lightness?
Thank you.
Or is that
observation?
It is an observation, but is that the proper way to go about it, or is it the only tools that you have at your disposal, and how does that work for you?
I'm coming at this as somebody who's trained to provide like clinical therapeutic services, and so I'm coming at it as somebody who has a lot of practice trying to tell people hard things in ways that take into account the fact that they might not understand a high level of language, and yet can still, usually if they're reasonable, they can understand simple logic. And I also feel like if people get too upset, then they stop paying attention. So the humor is kind of like a steam release valve, both for them and me, And I want to defeat this, and I want to give people the reminder what logical thought feels like, because we are in an age where we are encouraged to think illogically, and the phrase trans women or women is not A equals A. That is illogical. It's fundamentally illogical. And so attempting to internalize that means you just stop thinking logically. And that's bad.
What follows from that?
Attempting to fake it by trying to pretend that you understand when clearly you don't, because it's an illogical belief. And then from there, you end up seeding your thoughts basically to whoever the local bully is, whoever the local cult leader is, who has the social sway to enforce their hierarchical doctrine. So it's about making little churches, little cults, little religious offshoots, where the hierarchy isn't defined by competence. It's not defined by genetics, like a family. It's not defined by something other than just social pressure. It's a schoolyard. It's you can think rationally about what's the best policy to have for a society, or you can think about how to placate the emotional needs of people that are known to have at least a high degree of mental health comorbidities, when it's not directly a mental illness, as gender dysphoria certainly is. It certainly is a mental illness, and that's not shaming. It just is.
How do you suppose that your work might reach people, or are they unreachable? And this is just for when they're ready to be reached, when they have some sort of crisis or something that opens them up to logic, let's say.
I think that there's people that believe strongly in the polls, and that, especially right now, most people are just not familiar enough with it. So they might think that they have an opinion on it, but they haven't really thought that much about it, or confronted what it actually means to support these things. It sounds nice when they're exposed to it. It doesn't feel that controlling or rude, often because it doesn't affect them as much. One reason I'm speaking out is that I care about people with aphasia in the workplace. I don't want them to be bullied because they have a loss of language from a car accident or from a stroke. I don't want people to be going up to them and saying, well, you were corrected yesterday, and yet you still made a pronoun mistake. So I think that there's a lot more people that agree with me than don't, or will when they have evidence. Mm-hmm. And so but your mind does have to be mildly open. And if you are deep in the ideology, then you will need to get to the point where you're thinking about leaving. That does need to come first. But you might not think about that until you know that it's possible. And someone saying it's possible might be enough to start thinking maybe it is possible.
There was something, I think, last week about Jamie Lee Curtis, the actress from the Halloween movies and also True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and she said something. I didn't read the whole article, but there was just a blurb, and then it was posted right up there at the top of Twitter, because Twitter's got to push this stuff. How she's learning, her son or daughter. She's got a new daughter, and she's learning. She doesn't understand. She's still learning. So there is the person who believes, and then there's the people who care about the people who believe, who then have to go along with that or lose their child, or either lose their child or lose themselves. Wait, what? What's that?
And the church understands that. The church knows that they recruit a young person, they've recruited the young person's family. So it is a way of rapidly, exponentially expanding the control and reach of the church to go after the young.
What tools do parents have in that situation?
They're literally being told it's this or your child will die. Like, that is what they're being told explicitly by this church. If you do not go along with our religion, your child will die, and or we will take your child and do what we will with them, because you are now medically neglecting them if you don't get them a mastectomy at 14, because the internet told them that's what they wanted. This is not a good situation we're in.
5 years ago, that would be a completely, thoroughly crazy thing for anybody to say with sincerity. And yet here we are, and you have hours upon hours upon hours of footage, and we all have all these documents to show that. You think it was lean into it. Even if there are medical moneyed interests that would be put behind this, and maybe some we could go down the Bialik thing, and you trace out all the money, and you look through all these legal documents, and you say that this is kind of forced and being enforced in a planned way. Is there not something viral about it on itself as a church? Is there not some sort of mutation in thinking that allows us to persist and even capture these doctors, rather than these doctors doing it for any sort of nefarious purpose? There's just something very seductive about it.
You can't look at them all as being the same. Definitely, there people are in it for different reasons. In terms of the viral thing, the problem right now is that it's not recognized as a church, and so it's a free-for-all, and so therefore we are seeing what is effectively a new environment where they're allowed to breed much more rapidly. And so we're getting additional schisms, we're getting mutations. And we're seeing the split between the ace spectrum, whatever that means. Zero is not a spectrum. You can't have a spectrum of not having a sexual orientation. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a spectrum of kink identities, one of which is voyeur, by the way. And then there's the Church of the Non-Binaries, which is very pantheistic, and then there's transclassic, which is has a sexed soul in it. Oops. Sorry. Our Lady of Perpetual Hormone Replacement Therapy that believes that your dysphoria is a result of an actual brain mismatch in some way that needs hormones to fix. That maybe you're secretly intersex, which is another thing I was presented with at Berkeley. That perhaps trans-identifying people are secretly intersex, and we can sense that our hormones are wrong.
They're mental sex, or mental intersex, something like that.
Yeah, the theory is somehow that a completely normal developmental pathway that produces completely normal genitals somehow produced a wildly abnormal brain. That is so abnormal that it's problematic, and it's only on the axis of sex hormone exposure. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It is possible for hormone disorders to exist. It is possible to feel better because you changed your hormone levels. It's definitely possible, especially if you're taking high-dose anabolic steroids. I've heard those feel great.
Back on the Arnold Schwarzenegger kick.
That's what testosterone is. It's an anabolic steroid. So we are giving teenagers high-dose anabolic steroids, and then we're surprised when their moods change. Problem solved. It's the only treatment.
So you have linguistic trainings, and you're also like, you took, we had a whole conversation. I'm talking to the camera now. We had a whole conversation and I messed it up. So we had a lot of talk about lingualism and stuff. But if we think about this linguistically, if you take the metaphor of the church and all the schisms, can you think of an example of this happening linguistically with a new, is this not just kind of a linguistic phenomena with all these different dialects that are kind of warring with each other? And are they looking for dominance? Will there be a Catholic or Catholic or a grammar, like a proper English British grammar of gender at the end of this that it will eventually become static? Or is there something about it that is just stochastic and just feeding on itself? How does this play out? And is there...
I think it will settle to the extent that other religions have settled jargon. Scientology, of course, is super fan of messing around with language. There's other religious concepts like original sin that exist and only really make sense within the context of that symbol framework. I don't think it'll ever catch on as like a Creole or something where it was just naturally being reproduced. This is transgender is a social construct, as I'd like to say. It's not an organic, self-perpetuating community. It is a subculture / church. It is something where if you are not actively perpetuating it socially, it will just instantly die out because it's not like an ethnicity. In contrast.
It could be like a normal culture, though. If you, oh man, I don't mean to go here, but if you look at the way that certain places or certain provinces of the Anglosphere attempted to purge the culture out of the native indigenous populations wherever they did that. That was one way in which they were trying to end culture. But you're saying that this isn't even strong enough to perpetuate if it's not actively being promulgated and believed in and reified constantly. There's something that it's not arising on its own.
This is
embedded in a tradition, or
they self-select into this group on the basis of feeling like they're in contrast with the larger society. So if we took all of them out of normal society and we put them in some other society, it's either going to be a paradise or they will decide that they don't fit with the normal society. Further, any sort of like longer-term society, you are going to naturally have a split between the male and female cultures. That's just what happens. It's always happened. To think it wouldn't happen here if they actually were put on an island where they were able to reproduce and have their own island paradise, I think is very naive. Look how hard they're having to enforce it now. Look how hard it is for them to enforce it now. And they think that they'd be able to enforce it on their own kids. Their kids are going to rebel instantly. Look what's happening now with Gen Z. That Gen Z doesn't like what millennials had to say.
So you think that without if we figure out the correct conditions and remove them, the whole thing will collapse upon itself, or die out?
I think that the Church of Trans may continue to exist as a religion and a subculture that people may enter and be in for a time and then leave, like other religious groups, or may enter and stay in for a while. They certainly can exist and keep doing their thing. I don't think that the medical community should enable it, at all. Certainly not any medical organizations that are tax funded. I certainly don't think that my premium should go towards funding these religious rituals. If a person is many years post-transition, but they still need hormone therapy to prevent horrible outcomes, then that's different. That's somebody getting a medical treatment. However, a doctor should not be able to volunteer them for that condition without a very good reason, like cancer. And a mental illness is not a good reason and inherently brings up issues of consent.
How so?
If somebody's very mentally ill, then they are not in a position to reasonably evaluate likely consequences, and so they can't give informed consent. That's why it's an illness. And anybody who's been through a very significant mental illness and come out the other side of it has some insight of like, oh, wow, I can be in a different state. I can be in a very different state where things make complete sense that don't make sense. And to allow a trained medical professional to shepherd such a person, it's terrifying to me. It's terrifying to me as somebody who loves somebody with mental illnesses, as somebody that might have a mental illness in the future. I want to know that if I go to a licensed professional for help, I'm not going to be sterilized, like just because I was talked into it, just because they told me that it was the only answer. It's wrong. We live in a culture where people have mental illnesses, where they have brain injuries, where they can go from being reasonable to being not reasonable, but still look and sound reasonable. And these consequences are then borne out by the families forever. And there's all these feelings of betrayal, especially the younger you look, of like, why didn't my family protect me from these horrible consequences? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a fair question. And that can just completely sabotage people's relationships and their families. And that's wrong. Family, even the Jennings, who the parents are evil and should be in jail, their family should have been protected from this. Marcy Bauer should not have been allowed to sell castration to a healthy 17-year-old or 11-year-old if you count chemical castration, which Lupron is as well.
So you brought up the medical side of things. What about the major media, like just to bring up the Chappelle, the afterburn of the Chappelle thing and how this
Did you see the woman shouting repent? She was shouting repent.
She was shaking a tambourine and shouting, repent, motherfucker, repent, motherfucker, repent, motherfucker, to somebody who simply said, I love jokes. I love Dave Chappelle. It was just such a, and you know what the media ran with? They told a lie about that guy and said that he was hurling insults and attacking these people. And it was them. That's the lie
we're not doing anything is considered aggressive. One of the ones I was looking at this morning was this gender therapist talking about how, like, well, once you've been corrected once, then clearly that shows you're intending, because you went out of your way now to use that. And if we can avoid calling people the N-word, then we should be able to avoid this. And it's just set up so that you need to be jumping when they say jump. Otherwise, you are kicking in their mind somehow. I whatever the analogy you want to be, it's about interpersonal control and dominance. There's no right answer. That's why we keep seeing it shift. The sharpest minds in medicine have been working on this for almost a decade, and they still don't have the one true way of talking.
Why are we in thrall to gender tyrants? Why is it gender that is... how has that been... What weakness in that has led to this power grab?
I feel like moral panics typically have a sexual component. Like that's why the satanic panic happened in the 80s, was that there was a sexual component, so that captured people's minds. They like imagining it. And unlike gay and lesbian issues, it doesn't actually like it's held up as somehow equivalent, but I don't think that they discussed people in the same way. So that's why I feel like it's much more being buoyed up. We're also very primed to. We just went through this with the culture with gay and lesbian rights, and so there's a big thing of like, well, I don't want to deal with that again, so let's just next person, come on through. There is a very strong salvation-based narrative. We live in a very Christian culture where that just kind of resonates, even if people don't connect it to religion. That just seems like a thing that happens, is that people become saved. But that's something you go towards, you're lost, and then you're saved. It's in the symbol, the unconscious symbol base that we have in Christendom.
Can we exploit that to... is that something that needs to be unearthed, mined, and exploited in order to cure or counter the moral aspect of this? Reason, humor, are two things, but if we're going to talk about the symbolic understanding, the puritanical and the Christian, is there not some reason to go down into there and try to figure out how to bring that into the light in a proper way?
I'm just trying to think of what that would look like. I feel like that's a job for Jordan Peterson. I don't know if I'm as good at that.
You're passing the buck to Peterson.
Well, I'm just, he likes doing that. He gets in front of the whole class and he's just like talking about this and then that. And the hero and
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not as good at that. But I do think I have talked about that though, about how we can't overlook the fact that we are in a very, very born again Christian culture, and this is a born again religious narrative. One of the people that I was close enough to have held her mastectomy bag. She was just coming out of being an evangelical Christian upbringing. Like within a year she had decided, oh, I'm atheist, I'm a lesbian, oh, never mind, I'm trans. And it was just, and then I'm a gay man. Now I'm a gay man, because she was dating another trans man. So,
did that? If you don't mind speaking to that, how did that resolve? Did it stop? Did the wheel of
fortune?
Back.
She gained 30 pounds and her breasts grew back. That's how it resolved. It was muzzle off.
I mean, do people that get on that treadmill, though, do they not just end up getting exhausted by it and landing on someone and just accepting where they are? Is that not how it just happens?
I don't know what happened with her. We kind of lost touch. Last I heard, she was working out at some kind of transgender organization. So I do feel like people, when you join a church, you hang out there and you either go further into the church or you leave. And you're always somewhere in that process. You're either climbing out of the toilet bowl or you're going down the drain.
Oh, you have a high...
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, you have a high evaluation of church.
It's not just churches. Like, I don't know. Maybe I just don't like social groups. Maybe that's the problem.
You love people, but you hate groups of them. I guess you love persons, you hate people.
Yeah. Or I really like toilets, and my heaven looks like that toilet heaven from Rick and Morty.
I wouldn't put it past you.
Oh. I have to watch that episode after this. Geniuses.
So, have you... what have you learned from your audience that you've garnered from doing this work? Have you gotten anything good in return other than likes and shares?
I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. It's one thing that I've learned is that the people who have these questions about this are not motivated by hate. They don't hate trans people and want them to stop existing. They actually, their parents, families, friends, a lot of times they are trans people or detransitioners. Had a lot of people reach out. people struggling with gender dysphoria, people struggling with impulses to cross-dress that they don't feel that they can control, not wanting to know, does this mean this about me? So it's there's a lot of people who are hurting, a lot of people who don't feel like that there's actual help there for the issues that they're really struggling with because of these affirmative models that only tell them, yes, exactly, whatever you want to do is fine as long as it's gender. And they're like, no, but I feel out of control of this. I feel like the only thing I can do to calm my mind sometimes is to change my outfit and wear women's clothes, and that really stresses me out. And they clearly need help. They need help talking through it, because wanting to wear this or that outfit shouldn't have that control over you. There's nothing wrong with, like, wear the damn dress, it's fine. But if it's that big of a thing for you, there's clearly a deeper issue. And people are not getting help with that. Because, hey, maybe we should question about why you want to wear this dress and why feels like the only thing that makes you feel better. That's seen as conversion therapy somehow. And ultimately, as I mentioned, it's a symbol. Sometimes it's a symbol thing. There's something symbolic about wearing the dress, whether it means that there's lots of reasons people might fixate on that. But a good therapist needs to be able to step back and recognize that for at least some people, there is an obsessive compulsive aspect to it. And that underlying disorder will not get better by feeding it. And that doesn't mean that you can't wear the damn dress later. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to wear. In fact, I'm adamant that as long as the outfit is permitted for anybody at a workplace, at your level, you should be allowed to wear it. It should be a reasonable accommodation, no different from a hijab or a turban or whatever, a cross necklace, I guess. Like I don't see a reason why that should be an issue. But if it's causing you distress, then help should be available. And I don't think right now it is, based on some of the people reaching out to me.
Parts of the discourse can get kind of wayward. I don't want to call out rad femmes specifically, but there are a couple accounts that go under that banner or that forward a certain point of view that is rather militant in its critique of the entire body of this entire topic. And there is it could be, I've seen some people who have trauma with regards to their womanhood are galvanized to fight against the transgender ideology and end up just manifesting that trauma in a corrosive way, in a destructive way, and do some pretty lowly things. Specifically, I've had one account actually harangue one of my guests who gave one of the most open-hearted, vulnerable interviews that I've ever done. And she went after him and after him and after him until he's just, he just backed away. Said, I can't do this anymore. I can't speak out about this anymore. Delete all those episodes that you did. So the damage that this person, this woman has done to this man's reputation is also damaging the ability for his story to go out, and any autogynephilic males no longer have the resource to that. So I know kind of the answer to this question already, but I want to ask it is, what keeps you doing the good thing and not the bad thing with regards to being involved in this specific culture war? Like, what's your guiding light that allows you to evaluate if your actions are negative or positive?
Well, as I've said, I'm Gender Zeus. I have a higher moral clarity than other people who better.
Gender Zeus, huh?
Superior being.
I'm glad you're not Gender Kronos, because he'd be
lucky
tearing off my genitals. No, right?
Isn't that what he liked to do? So it's okay. He'll gestate you in his calf. Weirdo religion.
Talk about
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the. People are traumatized. A lot of radical feminists are very traumatized. And I'm also very traumatized. However, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of therapy, a lot of intensive, high-quality, long-term mental health therapy. And that has profoundly helped me, and is a big part of why that and then being trained to be one myself also helped. And so I feel like the biggest thing that could help reduce that is we just need mental health care. We need mental health care. We don't have that. Anybody should be able to access that level of care, because we could save so much heartache. There's no reason that we shouldn't have that and be encouraging it. So, and then also, like, there's goals. We have to have a big tent, because we have to get enough people to accomplish this goals. I'm not trying to start a political party. I'm not trying to have a platform beyond, we need to start, like, we agree that we want this goal or these specific goals. But how are we going to get there? And on this topic, it's a threat to the rights of every other category that I've thought of. I can't think of a protected category that's rights will not be infringed by these policies.
Cats.
What?
Cats probably won't be infringed upon. They don't give a shit.
Are they protected?
Maybe they're not.
Are they a constitutionally protected category or legislative? I guess there's animals. I don't know. Somebody's got to do the drug testing for these medications. So
there you go. But no, what you're saying, children are affected, men are affected, girls are affected, boys are affected, women are affected.
People who speak languages other than English are affected, other religions are affected, disabled people are affected. Gays and lesbians are being harassed, so sexual, like, it doesn't work.
So do we then just classify it as a religion and say you can believe this, but you can't enforce this? And what needs to happen to get that to happen?
Yeah, I think that any organization structured around a belief in gender identity and the existence of gender identity that does not recognize that it is a feeling that people can have and that does not make it real. So, if you are there to actually, I don't know, at this point, I would even not trust any organization that was explicitly organized around that. But any that are certainly should be reclassed as religious organizations. Gender therapy equals Christian counseling. You can do it if you want, I guess, but it shouldn't be something that you should be able to offer under color of licensure or under sort of a taxpayer funded, any sort of insurance company funded. Certainly shouldn't be in schools. Any moment in a school day and minutes in a school day are really, really, like, it is a lot of politics. How many minutes on each subject of the day kids need to study? I've worked in a lot of school districts. As a contractor for several years. And you need, like, it's a whole thing. So if you were taking 2, 3, 4 minutes at the beginning of every class to go around and discuss pronouns, that is a huge, huge bite out of the educational time. And that is a lot of money that is being spent on these religious rituals. And you have to pay for the building itself. You have to pay for the overhead of administrators. You have to pay for the teacher's time. All the other students are sacrificing learning time. It's not acceptable to be asking the class to bow their head in prayer. Even though it would be super easy, just go along with it, Johnny. All you have to do is bow your head. All you have to do is say he. No, not praying at school. And that's a lot of money out of the school budget, out of the economy. If it's happening at work or it's happening in courts, all that money is a direct transfer payment from the government to this church in order for them to spread their doctrine. Scientology did the same thing, trying to get into schools for the same reason.
How did they do that? I didn't hear about this.
Educational technology.
Ooh.
Learning technology. It was a big part of their doctrine has to do with L. Ron Hubbard's thoughts on education and how to learn. So there was all this curricula that was developed that they were trying to get into schools, and the guys that it was just secular, but it was actually being produced by the church, and it was church doctrine and based directly in that. And now they're doing that, but with gender identity. And then because it's a secret doctrine that's not scientific, they get to have all the secret knowledge about it. We just have to listen. We just have to accept. We have to memorize the gender unicorn, which is a real thing.
And a genderbread person, too.
And their ludicrous spectrum of male to female. It's a spectrum of 1 to 10. No, my dear, it's a spectrum of -5 to 5. Where's your 0 point?
That's another spectrum.
Support math education.
I'm just saying the zero is a whole other spectrum unto itself.
Oh, right. I forgot. It's a long journey across the plains of zero.
The President of the United States has a Vice President of the United States who's the first female Vice President of the United States, and she unveiled last week, I believe, a gender program or a gender something or another. It's a gender thing. But the write-up...
Clearly, Biden hates women. Afghanistan's unforgivable. Biden sold the women of Afghanistan. That is what happened, because we pulled out for money. That means he sold them. He knew what he was doing. He sold them. We need to see it that way. That's my opinion anyway. But tell me more about how Kamala is fucking.
Well, Kamala, she unveils this gender thing, like a gender program or gender push or gender thing. And it's all about getting women involved in government and getting girls involved and just redistributing social power. Well, that's the thing. It's all about women. It's all about girls. But then you go into the actual fine print and they define girls as anybody who identifies as a girl, including men and boys. So it's like, okay, what are we talking about? Is
Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that women fought very, very hard for, and guarantees equal opportunities in education and athletics for women and girls. And when you allow males to self-identify into female-only teams, what happens is that high school administrations tell male students to do that. And so now, instead of having a male team and a female team, which has a very measurable number of positions, so you know that there are equal opportunities for male and female students, there's a very measurable way. Now, high school administrators can tell males to all try out. The females, because of biological differences, get edged out. And now you have a male team and a trans women's team. And all of the educational funding and opportunities are now, once again, directed towards male students. Further, all the female students are going to have to change in facilities with the male students, exposing them to a sexually hostile environment, again in violation of their Title IX rights, in order to participate in the spots they can actually get on, because maybe there are an occasional spot. It's not okay. It reduces female students to second-class status.
This is a very turfy conversation.
Oh, God. Oh, no. We're going to find out. We are living through the Inquisition. The Inquisition is, do you believe trans women are women? That's the inquiry. That is the Inquisition that we're all having to figure out what the answer is. Do you believe Jesus is Lord? Do you believe trans women are women? No. No, I don't.
Have you been subjected to any sort of pushback from the people whose beliefs you are slandering with your so-called reason and logic?
I've been mildly stalked, very mildly, surprisingly.
Well, like somebody peeks over a hedge like twice a day or something? Like very, very mild stalking.
I removed the hedge. Now I'm safe. I replaced it with a shrubbery. I had to go on a quest to get it. No, it just... I had somebody text my phone, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't even from this. I'm pretty sure that was from the actually autistic community, who also they're not fans either.
They came after me. Well, one did. It was pretty intense. I got railroaded. They're kind of autistic about being autistic. It's very one track, and they go all the way. No offense.
It's funny because they'll go after me for being obsessive. It's like, okay.
Wait, how did you get on the bad end of the autistic community? What did you do?
I said that behaviorism and ABA are different, and that behaviorism is in fact an inescapable science. You can't not use behaviorism in therapy. You're either going to use it well or use it poorly. Those are your options. You can't get around it no matter what kind of therapy you're using. It's just science. It's the science of conditioning. Conditioning exists.
And that's a taboo.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to say that because they don't want to hear that behaviorism and applied behavior analysis are actually different. They also don't want to hear that ABA is not bad because it uses behaviorism. They're not fans of that fact.
What's wrong with behaviorism conditioning? Does that take away their agency of some sort or something? Yeah,
that's their theory, is that the only reason that, or the reason that, and I'm thinking one person in particular who's got somewhat of a platform, said that the reason that she uses that she has a hard time with self-motivation as an adult is because as a child she was taught to only work for stickers. So this is the reason. And it's like, but that's their safe function. That's and kids don't always want to do what they should do to develop. So,
is she demanding more stickers from the government in order to continue her productive life, or is that what she that's what she wants?
No, that's the thing, is they don't seem to know what they want. They just seem to know that they have a belief that they know what's best because they're autistic, but they haven't actually tried to put that into practice in any sort of realistic way. Like, they haven't gone to school. Like, if they did, they probably changed their mind really fast. So by definition, these people are a bit know-nothing in their approach. They just kind of don't know what they're talking about. I did learn through trying to figure out why the hell they seem to really hate ABA and not the other kinds of specialists that they almost certainly saw. I doubt that ABA was all of their only therapy. So, but that's the one they seem to hate. And it seems to be, from what I could tell, that the ABA therapists that they send to the home are there a ridiculously long amount of time. So already that makes it harder to maintain the good relationship, and are often not very extensively trained because they need people to go to these houses for a very long period of time. So they're getting through with like supervision from a BCBA and then 40 hours of training. So I can see how they would make more mistakes. But it's unfortunate that they do not want to interact with professionals enough to form a model of it that's actually useful and would allow it to drive policy. They don't want to do that. They just want to be mad and stalk. So it's frustrating.
That phenomena, and I don't mean to pick on this community, but again, it's activism gone wild. Is there's something going on in the thought process where it's a self-determination of the autists by the autists, and so
it's morphing into its own church.
It's morphing its own church, and that has aspects of other sorts of intersectional woke ideologies where it's the perspectivalism or epistemic
standpoint theory.
Yeah, standpoint theory. It's like this. I am awarded with understanding everything about this community because I am a part of this community. And the weird thing is that that's kind of respected. I posted, somebody called me a bigot because...
To say it bluntly, the weird thing is that's respected, yeah.
It is. It's weird. I got into a tiff on Facebook. Somebody
people
called me a bigot.
Their competencies over a lifespan. People, it's childish.
Yeah. Well, but it's respected, especially by the progressive, liberal, kind of well-to-do, weird women, Western industrialized, educated women. It's I got into, somebody called me a bigot because I criticized some sort of policy in Oregon about allowing self-determination of gender. They called me a bigot. I'm like, actually, no. Here's 100 videos that I've done, interviews on this topic of transition with leading doctors and specialists and researchers who were foundational to the entire medical concept of this. And she's like, I don't want to hear from the researchers. I want to hear from the trans
folks. You're the bigots somehow. You're the ones with the opinions you don't want to change.
Yeah. Well, she just wanted to hear from the person that's so-called trans, but even there, it was like, there's 20 interviews with trans people too, but it's like that's like this privileged kind of thing. So it seems like in the larger social matrix, we're abdicating, again, back to that parent-child relationship. We're abdicating knowledge and know-how of identity to the identity holder, and that identity can include a range of mental disorders, which questions how do you know something if you have such a debilitating mental disorder. But
brain dead people are not experts on being brain dead or on brain death. They're not. Yeah. We don't let brain dead people diagnose other brain dead people. Yeah. We certainly don't let brain dead people self-diagnose. At some point, your illness actually does make you not as well less knowledgeable, less reliable.
Like you probably could do a better essay, a better essay depicting your condition than a doctor who knows your condition, like some sort of aesthetic art project. You would be able to convey the meaning of undergoing such an experience or such a condition. That doesn't mean you know how to fix it.
You may know that may not be obvious to to a doctor you're seeing, like. I was close to someone with Marfan syndrome, and there's a lot of implications to having Marfan syndrome that most doctors have never contemplated. because they've never encountered it. So at that point where yeah, he would, because of his standpoint as somebody who was very intelligent with Marfans, he had a lot of insight into it from directly from the experiences of having Marfans and the cognitive capacity to remember and learn from them. So
what's Marfans?
It's a connective tissue disorder. It's a genetic disorder where you have weakened cartilage and weakened collagen, which does other things besides cartilage, like fibrous tissue and heart valves. So it makes it weaker. So they tend to grow much taller and have very long bones for reasons. And then, of course, are therefore liable to have osteoporosis and fractures and such. And so he had to have a spinal fusion when he was quite young. And otherwise just, and then hernias everywhere. He could bend his finger, his thumb back all the way, like flat in this angle. Like I can do this angle, he could do it backwards. And just on and on. Really hard time maintaining body weight. So things like that, if you are actually close to a real condition like that, you can see it unfold. But self-evaluating a mental illness for which there's no blood test, good luck. You're looking for a black cat in a dark room that might be empty.
But what does that say about... I'm sorry, go on. And the gender theory what?
And the gender theorists claim to have found it. So, but they can't prove it because they can't catch it. So just, anyway.
So is there an end to your work on this topic?
Yeah, I hope so.
Or Talos?
Come out of this nightmare.
Yeah.
I hope that I hope that my work hastens my work becoming irrelevant. I really, really hope that the more I make, the more people will wake up and start to push back and realize, no, actually there's serious harms to going along with this, and to letting loved ones who have kids who are thinking about starting their, like, I have to speak up. I went through a period of deciding if I should say something about some friends' medical transitions, and I decided not to. I decided this is the right thing. Clearly, this is a good, normal thing, and I should be a supportive friend. And it's hard to live with that. It's hard to live with knowing that I supported someone in doing that. So it's going to rip these families apart. And I hope that we can just put a stop to it, and then I can go back to focusing on other stuff.
Like what?
I really like languages, so I like kind of go back to my life of being a linguistics person. I mean, at this point, I probably still want to transition into talking about other aspects of feminism once this stuff is over, because that seems to be something that I find entertaining. So I probably won't completely go back to what I was doing before, but I do hope to get to the point where we can all look back on this and be like, yes, lobotomy was nuts. And, you know, there's a reason I'm not making documentaries about how terrible lobotomy clearly is. We're all on the same page finally. But yeah, I am kind of hoping, though, at some point that I will first find people who can who want to collaborate to prove exactly why transmasculine voice is happening. Because I have a solid theory, I just don't have endoscopy equipment.
What's this theory? What are you talking about?
Transmasculine voice is the sound quality that trans men often get, where their voice is just very recognizable. That, like, you are clearly a trans man, you are not a man. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes their voices can be very, very compelling and don't have this at all. But sometimes it's quite dramatic, and I've got some compilations of, and it's something that's been known to their community. I actually ran into the phenomenon through a presentation on it that was being held at a local LGBT center quite a while ago. At the conclusion of which they all wanted to complain about the fact that speech pathologists are always pathologizing them. Don't come to us.
Wait, is there legitimacy to them not wanting to be pathologized? Is there something like harmful or difficult that they're trying to fix or deal with? Or are there even exercises that they could be doing to help themselves with any sort of collateral pain or distress that this changed voice box due to testosterone has affected?
Yeah, no, I think that some of it is kind of embarrassment. They don't want to think about it as being recognizable, even though they kind of must know that it is eventually. And because yeah, there's a lot that can benefit them. Testosterone, for instance, makes connective tissue less stretchy. That's why women don't have women have far more knee injuries than men, which I think is not something they fully nailed down until like 2014 or 15. But estrogen directly makes things stretchier, which kind of makes sense. Why women might need to stretch more sometimes. And so that there's that change happening, and then it also makes cartilage grow and otherwise changes collagen synthesis. So you see, that's my friend with Marfan's that was quite close to taught me a lot. That's making me kind of ring the alarm about testosterone, because it makes cartilage grow. And so it's the inside the voice, you have several pairs of very small articulating cartilages that are just little tiny triangle pieces of cartilage that move in relation to each other, and all that has to do with so those are growing. Those are just growing in absolute size, and the whole larynx itself is not growing that much because they're adults. So you're getting crowding, in other words. But I would need someone with an actual camera to go in and look at it. I don't have that equipment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And other help to quantitatively measure it. But I know what's happening in their voice. I've heard enough of them and thought about it, and I have the expertise to know what I'm hearing. So,
is there?
I'd like to be an expert witness is the conclusion of that. Hopefully eventually I'll get to be expert witnesses for suing some of these doctors for putting some of these teen girls on high dose testosterone, knowing it would predictably ruin them.
Are there procedures that can, like some sort of like laser that goes in there and shaves off those triangular things, or are there voice exercises that can accommodate them better or regulate them better and to achieve more musicality or round out if there's harshness, or there is a tone. I know what tone you're talking about, but I don't have the skill set to actually describe the tenor and all that.
Well, they sound a bit like a popular character, at least from a while back. His name was Ned from South Park. If you're familiar with that character, is the Vietnam guy. He had the little voice box that he spoke with. And they sound like that because, like Ned, they are speaking through something that is has a narrower range of pitches, and it doesn't have that analog movement of what's called the lamina propria around the vocal folds, and so we're not hearing that. And there's no other real culprits that I can think of than the lamina propria is not as flexible, and there's too much stuff that's basically dampening it. Every time it starts to flutter, it just gets dampened. And yeah, there are things that they could do to manage that better. Like they need to, first of all, understand what's happening, because the impulse is to just try to strain through it, which may cause more damage and also affect how cartilage is being synthesized day to day. If they're putting too much strain on it, that might increase the rate that it's synthesized or decrease it. I actually don't know. That'd be a question for somebody with more expertise on cartilage and collagen. They could theoretically go into the laser. However, I would certainly want the field to be far more advanced to knowing how to shave those down before I would want to tell someone, yeah, go just kind of hope, because it seems like that could cause more problems than it would solve quite easily. But it's possible. Maybe in extreme cases, you could go in and either with a laser or with a cautery try to actually, because it is cartilage. You can cut it pretty easily without causing it to scar very much. That's kind of what's both great and terrible about cartilage, is that it can break off into chunks that don't then scar to anything and then float around, so you get screwed up ankles.
So you were talking about these little triangles in my voice box. Are they attached to something? Do they need blood? Do they need nerves? Or are they just kind of like rattling around in this particular kind of box?
They're attached to other structures, and they're attached to muscles. And so as muscles move, contract them to kind of tilt them, and then the vocal other muscles move against them to open and close the larynx, and then to stabilize the whole structure. If you're going to do vibrato, you might want to use less tension than if you're doing straight tone, and so all those muscles can help stabilize it.
Okay.
And they're of course also attached to each other. And they do have blood supply, and they do grow like connective tissue in general. That doesn't grow that fast, or heal that quickly. Because there's relatively low blood supply to cartilage.
But it is still connected to the vein.
It's still living tissue.
Okay.
Which is part of why your nose and your ears grow bigger as you age.
Yeah.
Just because the cartilage keeps growing. And it's a bit scary for me though, because it's changing those connective tissue tension and size, and every tissue type that's in your voice is in your heart. And so if it's changing things that much in your voice, it is changing your heart structure and function too. And that's per another lecture I saw from this pediatric endocrinologist. He went into length about all the long-term cardiovascular complications of these hormones. Both testosterone and then estrogen, of course, increases blood clots. That's well known. So, and makes things stretchier, which again, in the heart. So. Yeah.
You, I believe you told me a cool story about like the heart and the voice box, and because of evolution. There's like this nerve.
Oh yeah.
That goes around our heart. It just sounds like the voice and the heart, both spiritually and physically, are connected. They have a very
they have
strong
a nice
relationship.
Connection there. Yeah, the your vagus nerve, the wanderer. That's what vagus means. Cranial nerve 10 goes down, and then part of it branches off and innervates one muscle in your larynx. I believe the cricothyroid, but I always like to Google the effort. And the rest are innervated by something called the recurrent laryngeal nerve, and that's a different branch that goes all the way down, wraps around your heart, and then comes back up and innervates everything else in your larynx. And the reason it goes all the way down to your heart and comes back around is because it was a very direct route when we were fish, and then we decided to evolve necks. And what became our voice box and our brain went forward, and what became our heart went backwards, and our that nerve got lassoed a bit. So it's in any animal that has a neck has this. So for that reason, heart surgeries can often result in hoarse voice when you wake up. That's not due to the ventilation. You can also get a harsh voice from the ventilation itself, but.
But because the nerve itself is still healing. That's what makes it.
Yeah, the nerve itself can get damaged on the heart, and then that leads to if it gets damaged here, then when it goes back up to innervate this, it's not going to do as good of a job. And so some of those muscles might not work as well, and you might get things like those small cartilages not moving out of the way because that muscle isn't working, but the other ones do work, kind of.
Is that what you mean by a hoarse voice? There's more of that going on.
That's creaky voice. So that it's creaky. I mean, more like this, kind of hoarse, like you're sick.
Okay, up there.
Brain and strangled is another vocal quality. That's diagnostic. That's kind of more if they have spastic muscle issues.
What do you mean spastic? So it's just tightening? Is that what you mean by spastic?
Yeah. The muscles are stuck and tight.
Oh. Okay.
So you might get a stroke, an upper motor neuron damage in your brain that leads to a spastic dysarthria, meaning whatever muscle was fed by that nerve is just constantly tight now. You can't relax it. Versus lower motor neuron damage, if I cut the nerve in your arm, for instance, then everything below that nerve would be flaccid. It'd be floppy. So some people are paralyzed like this. Some people are paralyzed by floppy. It depends on if it's happening in the brain or in the lower nerves.
We spoke about gender at length, but since we were talking about language and voices, how do I sound sexier? Or what is a sexy voice? Like, what is the mechanic of the sexy voice?
I will let you know when I find out, but there's a reason I'm single.
I don't believe you. I think you're going to keep the knowledge to yourself.
You might misuse it.
What? What are you talking about? I run a podcast.
You're an evil lizard.
I am evil. I'm just trying to get people to melt in my
Your turf hat.
rainbow poop.
Oh, is it poop? I thought it was a sorting hat.
I think it's like it's the poop emoji with, I guess, a little bit of sorting hat activity there. But no,
I guess the sorting hat is flatter.
Yeah, it's more angular. And it does have a thing going on like that. I don't know. Can you see?
Does that mean it's an anti-turf hat? You're saying the sorting hat is poop? Is that what that means?
What does the rainbow represent? I actually have like Pink Floyd rainbow. I have Apple rainbow. I have all these different like meanings, symbolic.
I think they cancel out. So if you have 3, that means that's the same as +1 rainbow.
Okay, which lands on what? What do we have? What are we doing with the rainbow?
Bisexual. You're bisexual. Oh, really? That's 1 and 3 rainbow. It's the new binary. Instead of 0 and 1, it's 1 and 3. Just make adjustments. Control F everything. See if it still works.
What's your favorite language that you've ever heard?
That I've ever heard.
Well, what one that you hear and you just like chocolate, or if you like chocolate, you know, like gives you tingles or something like that.
It's so hard. I really like the Algonquin languages. I like that family, Inuit. I think that those languages are so warm. I don't know how else to put it. It seems very, which is ironic because they're Arctic, but just having gotten very, very fortunate to encounter them on social media. It's just so beautiful. So that one, of course, I really like Turkish, but I feel like for that one, it's the sound is of course beautiful, but the structure is amazing. And of course, Spanish. I love Spanish. Mexican Spanish specifically. That's the one I grew up around.
So it's got it has a background radiation to your consciousness, or you're coming into being. Yeah.
Very, very, very essential to my early life. Mm-hmm. Confused my mom when I started making predictable bilingual Spanish errors. Spanish-English errors. She got unsettled. She was like, "Oh no, it's regression. She's regressing."
Wait, regressing to what?
Oh, I was the pronoun errors when you make them, when you're trying to transfer the word order from Spanish to English. It sounds like you forgot what I and you mean. So, or which order they go in. So she was worried that my language I had achieved something and then I had lost that skill. But really, it was just normal bilingual language development.
Oh, so you were like just a kid, 2 or 3 or 4, and you started to adopt. Okay. So she thought that you were.
She's English only from New York.
Okay. So. Oh, from New York. Okay.
Yeah. So I was born in Southern California.
And then you said that you're going to go on to like re-engineer feminism so that you have all the power now. What things? If feminism was a piece of software and it needs updates or upgrades or some sort of things, what are you concerned with teasing out and fixing or refining or what?
That's a good question. I would really like for women to really internalize the idea that matriarchy is not only possible, but very common and has clear benefits. In addition, encourage women to think in systems, in terms of systems, and rather than in terms of like I think we get bogged down in the moral character of the people around us. And there's certainly plenty of it's a very fruitful field you can go into because there's a lot of evil that is chosen by peers in order that is the mechanism by which the repression is getting replicated. But the system itself precedes everybody that's alive. So we have to think about how we can change the system, and then assume that the interpersonal interactions will change, versus trying to change the interpersonal reactions through interpersonal pressure. I don't think that that's very effective, and I think that that just drives people apart. But I do think we need to be very clear about, like, well, we need systemic change. And one systemic change, I feel like, and I want to believe that eventually, that if enough people thought about it hard enough, they would get here, that if we want to see real change, we need to just start only voting for women. Doesn't matter what their policies are. It doesn't matter what political party they're from. We need to send a message to the political organizations that only women will be elected. So you need to find, because the politicians are the extension of the party, right? They're not on their own. We think of them as if they're independent somehow, but there's no reason, if the sexes are equal, why they couldn't just completely switch sexes. And then so the fact that people are afraid of doing that is kind of the point of advocating that policy.
So you think that men and women are different, but they're equal?
Biologically, we're very different, yeah.
Sociologically, are we at all different?
I don't know what that means. I think we have different cultures.
Yeah, you said that earlier. You said men and women think and act differently.
I don't know that we think differently. I do think that we have different cultures. I don't know if that makes sense. There are differences broadly, but you can't predict that for individuals. So it's kind of like other cultures, I guess, where it's like I don't think that Turks think differently, except that they do have different ideas because they're part of Turkish culture. So we can make generalizations and on whether, you know, in this culture, this was presented to me that a big cultural difference is that in this culture, if we need to cancel last minute, I have a family emergency. That's the thing. But a family emergency in Turkey is rude. You didn't have a family emergency. You had unexpected guests. And that's because they were a culture where if you didn't let people stay with you when they were traveling, bad things happened to them. Very bad things happened. So cultures in that region generally very high value on that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's an intrinsic difference so much. However, I do think that there are intrinsic differences that are predictable. I don't know. It's hard to tease these things apart. I don't claim to have the full answer. I do know that there is a huge difference in thinking when you look at a wide enough population and you dumb it down enough to whether when you have to give to make the child, what your role is. And if your role in it is very quick and then it's done and then you leave, times a large enough number of people, if that group has enough power, then they will devalue the effort that women put into giving birth and the danger that comes with that, because it's outside of their experience, and they may be making a choice not to be empathetic to the group that they want to exploit.
Okay.
In some way. So in that sense, I believe that when you have a cultural matriarchy, which is not the same thing as a patriarchy with a female ruler, that's not a matriarchy. She is a matriarch, but that's not a cultural matriarchy. That's not a matriarchy with the beliefs that go along with being in a cultural matriarchy that's actually perpetuating. That's a difference, a predictable difference is how children are seen and treated. And from there, you can also get rid of a lot of problems in the same way that if giving people access to mental health care that they can afford treats problems.
I could see.
Whereas when people have unhappy childhoods.
I'm sorry, could you restate that?
I said, whereas when you keep women poor, then people have unhappy childhoods.
Yeah.
And right now, poverty is feminine, the feminine face of poverty. Or poverty is female, however you want to. Poverty is female is clear. Most people in poverty are women with children.
Mm-hmm. I could see I don't know how it would happen. I could see a matriarchal superstructure. I don't know how big it could get. I don't know how it would scale. I don't know if the globalist matriarchy would act different than a localist or, let's say, a township matriarchy. But I could see that it would have problems with competition. I could see how patriarchy is good to put other patriarchies, keep other patriarchies in place, and matriarchy from intuition, and then kind of what you were describing about focusing on the poor, focusing on children, would be sustaining the internal to the detriment of protecting it from external pressures and forces and stuff like that. And I'm just talking psychologically. That's just something that came up. I could totally be wrong.
I just feel like that's not something that's a problem that's specific to a matriarchy. I feel like any smaller government in the current system has to face larger government predation. Look at the Uyghurs.
Look at the TERFs.
So tragic.
What do you do for fun? Pinball? Racquetball?
That's you have to go somewhere for that. It's outside.
So you live in a pod?
Yeah, it's a Japanese hotel. This just looks like a screen. It's a fake. What do I do for fun? I make silly videos lately. I don't know. I do a lot of arts and crafts.
What do you mean silly videos? Like little TikToks where you like talk to yourself like Gollum or something?
No, I'm not that cool. No. I talk to myself. Well, if I am like, sorry, I'm just reminiscing about being Gollum. I missed my chance for a Halloween costume.
What are you talking about?
I do a lot of crafts. I paint, do things that are creative, mostly to relax.
Do you do logic puzzles when you're trying to fall asleep at night?
No.
Some people do that. You're a linguist too.
Well, unless you count trying to think through the latest weird trans propaganda as a logic puzzle, which you could make that argument.
I like the term trans pop.
I'm trying to see how I control people.
That's so fascinating. Sorry, what did you say?
I got Sam Lux to stitch one of my videos. He was apparently not happy that I duetted him, saying that he was. Well, he posted a video talking about how he had he tricks straight men. He goes around tricking straight men, and so I duetted that and be like, by the way, yeah, he said he described a specific time he did this on his YouTube, and he didn't like that, and so now several days later, I still have 12-year-olds telling me to KYS, which stands for kill yourself.
You are making waves with these big accounts. You're touching their nerves. You're touching their buttons.
Well, it's funny because he stitched the account that has like 40 followers. So I don't think that they know that I have a larger following elsewhere because it hasn't bled over into anything else.
Oh, okay.
So don't tell them.
So I'm sorry. Stitching is a TikTok term for redoing somebody else's video.
It's where you take the first few seconds of a video from someone else, and then when you put your own feedback on it, and then you post it, and then there's a link to go back to the first video for people reading who want to go and harass someone. And
you have like a tiny little TikTok account and a big heavy YouTube account, and then like this somewhere in between Twitter account.
Well, I started on TikTok. I got up to about 10,000 followers, and then my account got deleted. And then since then, I've decided that Water Strider Bug was the body plan I wanted to go with, and so now I have 10 accounts. Actually, I think I have 11, but I can't get into at least one of them.
Okay.
It seems to discourage them.
You're like your own swarm. Okay. So why do they come after your 10K account?
Because I'm assuming because it was the only one I had, and because I was a new turf, newly minted. Okay. And at that time, I had it was a linguistics account, so there was kind of a broader diversity. I think. I don't know. I think they just kind of go after accounts, and they're hoping to discourage me. All of the accounts that I post up on, as soon as they're like identified by the algorithm as a turf account, the bar for getting banned or blocked or having commenting suspended changes a lot versus on other accounts I have that are not turf oriented. You can get away with a lot more. So there's clearly some sort of social capital, social credit that's being attached to these accounts, where if they get reported too many times. So it's just it's unrelated to the community guidelines.
That's surprising for a product from China to enforce a social credit score.
Oh, right? Like, it really made me question some things.
Why would they?
I really trusted the algorithm gods. I was like, how could this possibly have been misused by a political force? I'm shook.
Maybe China's behind this. You know, they banned sissy men from television in China. They're like, look at what America's doing. Let's do the exact opposite, and let's promote exactly what they're doing, so that they just completely ruin and sterilize their entire generation. Then we win. More or less,
somebody is. Although the U.S. government is engaged in plenty of mass sterilization campaigns on their own, it's just this time they've managed to get people to volunteer for it, which is amazing.
Well, I mean, not to go there, but Planned Parenthood in certain places has done phenomenal for culling certain populations.
Yeah, and they're still doing it. They're still prescribing the hormone blockers and the cross-sex hormones and doing the surgeries and on teenagers, on minors, and it's just like, what? The company founded by the eugenicists is still actively engaged in eugenics? I am shocked. Who could have seen it?
This is like China enforcing censorship on the rest of the world.
Did you hear that they're at least considering a 3-child policy now? I
found it really fascinating.
You can't satirize it. You just can't satirize it.
Well, why is that satirical? 3-child policy?
No, I don't think it was satirical.
No,
it would be if you were trying to make fun of China and their 1 child. If you were going to satirize and be like, well, how about we solve it with a 3-child? But if that's their actual solution to the effects of their 1-child policy, maybe the solution is to stop regulating people's birth. Maybe if you just pay mothers, they'll want to have a 2nd child. Maybe if you don't force them to get abortions, they might feel a little bit more comfortable getting pregnant. I don't know. There's a thought, China.
China's weird, but it's going to win.
It's getting there. I read a theory that's part of the purpose of the pipelines, is that they want to actually poison our water.
Wait, pipelines from where? Are we piping water from China?
No, we're piping oil and tar sands across Native American lands that then spill predictably.
Okay.
Meanwhile,
and then
the construction, the actual people coming in and doing the construction are also engaged in sex trafficking rings that steal Native people and or kill them or sell them. It's a huge problem. Missing and murdered Indigenous women is a crisis.
Yeah. I just had an interview about that earlier today.
And so the theory I read is that if they can poison our water, they can force us to buy their water and further impoverish us as a country.
We're not paranoid. We're just reading articles.
Well, we've studied history. This stuff has happened before recently.
Do you have a party tonight or tomorrow night?
I was just going to go around the neighborhood and scare children.
Oh, really? Are they easily scared?
I'll find out. I'll report back.
I don't imagine you being terribly intimidating in person. But
I'll validate them. Trigger their dysphoria.
I disaffirm you.
He, I'm the knight who says he.
Oh man, I was about to say, imagine what Monty Python would have done with this, but they already did this whole thing. They already did it all.
They saw it coming.
I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.
Oh, I was thinking of The Life of Brian. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, that one too, yeah. I want to be a woman.
Why do you want to be a woman?
I want to
now that's policy.
Yep.
Now that person's the president.
Oh, yeah. The highest office in the land. jeez. Well, maybe you'll get your wish and everybody will start voting whim instead of dem.
Instead of whim is whimsical.
Women.
Oh, women.
'Cause you want
women.
to go vote whims. I don't know how that'll work in practice, but I do know that commenters who got to that part of our conversation will flip out about it.
Oh yeah, and it's like but that's the idea is like if you don't think that women are inferior, if you don't think that there are sex differences that are relevant, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Because it's the parties that are deciding the platforms and the parties that are picking which people to put there. So it's about sending them that this is how you win is to put women. And the truth is that we all know that women in power would change things, and people are afraid of that because of misogyny.
Why hasn't there been a woman government, a major woman government, or has there been? I know there's like villages here and there that are purely women.
I mean, the Iroquois were a multi-state government that very much influenced the government of the United States that we're still enjoying, and they're culturally matriarchal. And it was designed to be set up where men were not oppressed. Men still had leadership roles, but the ultimate power rested with the clan leaders who were women, in part because women outlived men. So if you give power to older people, eventually, assuming women aren't oppressed, women will be the people in power because they live the longest.
Statistically speaking, that's true. And
Also, because we
women as a category of sex.
We're an assassin cult too.
You're an assassin cult.
No, women in general. We were just telling you. I shouldn't have told you.
Oh man,
that's the real reason that we live longer.
It's kind of arousing, actually. I'm gonna get killed.
That's misogynist.
How do I know?
I'm ending all of your interviews.
How do I know it's going to happen? What's the trigger? What's the trigger to get assassinated by the woman? To be assassinated by the woman killing cult?
You just hit the male average lifespan.
Oh.
Plus or minus a couple years. It's very insidious. It's very slow. We use it for atherosclerosis by very gently encouraging you to eat more and more every day. We resent the institution of heterosexual marriage so much that we just put extra butter on your bacon every day.
I'm telling you, it's a very arousing cult. No wonder it's passed the test of time and it's exerted its power over the centuries. Because men just fall in love with it. Kill me, baby, with the butter.
That's the real reason the matriarchy can't take over. It's just because everything we do to try to revolt, y'all are on board, and then we just can't. You know, we just can't stay mad.
I think we'll be okay. I mean, there's going to be a lot of casualties, but you're doing good work.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're being silly too.
We gotta laugh. Everyone's so afraid to laugh at these people.
Yeah.
Did you know that the word travesty actually derives from the word transvestite?
What?
That's really where it came from, for exactly the reason you might think.
What? Wait, hold on. I'm looking at my dictionary.
French, it's like travestimento. The vest in travesty comes from clothes, like a vest.
Oh, okay.
Vestments.
Travesty. It's a travesty of justice. Here, let's look. Dictionary. 17th century, from French travesti, disguise, past participle of travestir, from Latin travestire, from trans, across, vestiri, clothe. As an adjective in the sense of dressed to appear ridiculous. Oh my God, I can't believe that this word has not been canceled.
Right?
It's a travesty.
I came across it because that's how it got copied into many languages, is the word for transgender, is travesty. So I came across it when I was a Turkish translator at an actual LGBT center like pamphlet that I was translating, and it was like lesbian, gay, bisexual, and travesty. They like fell out of my chair. It was hilarious.
Oh, no.
I was in it at that time too. I was very much. I would have canceled it if I didn't have more humor.
Yeah, what's up with that? How is humor? You keep on. You've again. in our previous interview, you sang the praises of the amount of work that you did on your mental health, and that is what helped you more than anything. But it sounds like you also had like kind of like this pet dog or this little goddess called laughter and humor that has also shepherded you through life and darkness and stuff.
It helps.
And does that help with cognitive dissonance too? Like when something's funny, you know that something's awry?
It helps with stress relief to try to figure out if there's something absurd about the situation. It definitely helps. Like I'm somebody that where I'll be where it can be hard to cry. So it's easier to make jokes sometimes, which has led to making jokes at inappropriate times like funerals. They're funny. They're really funny. Then I'm asked to leave, though. That happened one time. It was really funny, though.
What did you say? Can you repeat it?
Oh, okay. Well, so this guy's house had burned down, and someone had passed away, and it was a thing. And I don't even know if I should repeat it. The punchline was that he'd already told that story, bro.
What's the setup?
In context, it was really funny. Everybody in the vicinity laughed really hard. And then I was asked to leave and told they didn't want to see me again.
Oh. It wasn't the joke that was offensive. It was the laughter that the joke caused. For which you were responsible.
It's because we were wearing the same bag, and like he came over and he started the joke by saying, "Yeah, funny story." Because we had the same bag, and I was like, "Oh, cool, we have the same bag." And he said, "Oh yeah, funny story. This is my friend's bag, but my house burned down." And I said, "Oh, is that where you got this?" And he's like, "Yeah." So, and then he said it again. He said, "Yeah, funny story. My house burned down today." And I told him, I said, "You already told that story, bro." Completely flat affect. That's why it was funny. But he started it anyway. I was obviously grieving too. It was a wake. It was not a happy day, but yeah, it was funny. Other people were amused briefly. I did have to move after that. But. Wait,
they ran you out of town, not just out of the funeral home, huh?
No, they didn't. It's fine. They all moved. Actually, they all left the state.
You cleared that room.
Now I have to lock the doors if I'm doing stand-up.
So that's how you're going to scare all the children up and down the yard. Just going to hand a Gatsby your way to horror.
I'll just jump out behind and just tell a joke that doesn't land. They'll run.
Yeah, you're not stalking if you're actually trying to make somebody laugh. That's what I learned in my dealings with women. If you're joking, if you're joking, if you're trying to make a joke, it's not harassment. It's not untoward.
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah,
that's how it works, right?
Yeah, and if you're trying to sell something, you can just knock as many times as you want on the door.
Yeah. The persistence, insistence, and consistence, or whatever, right?
They should affirm. They just don't affirm.
I started this hashtag that's not taking off, but I want it to. It's called, I shouldn't say this on camera, it's called TR Ape Culture.
Yeah. I've used that phrase before too.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just parroting this whole like lesbians being coerced into activity with male bodies to identify as female. So that's my latest project.
Yeah. I have a lot of examples of that I've gathered of that particular culture.
But they say that it doesn't exist. All the combative articles to that article in the BBC saying, "Oh, this doesn't exist. This doesn't exist. You're painting us all wrong." Like,
so much primary source data.
There's a lot of primary source data. Sorry, guys. If you clean up your own mess, your own community, we wouldn't have to do it for you. So you're actually making yourself look bad. Yeah.
They're not true Christians.
No true Scotsman. Or Scots lady. Scots lads.
At least you know who the true Scotsmen are. You actually can verify if somebody is literally a Scot national.
Scottish.
Scottish national?
Scottish lash. Scottish lass. Did you do you work in the movie industry and teach people like Leonardo DiCaprio how to talk like a Frenchman? Or
I don't. That would be cool.
Yeah. Do you ever do that accent coaching?
I have done accent coaching in the past. When I've done accent coaching for work, it's been about improving their accent in English so that they can be more effectively understood. I have not done coaching for other languages unless it's just interpersonally. I'm trying to teach people how to roll their R or something.
How do you roll your R?
Stop retroflexing. You have to have more
retroflexing. Sorry.
So what's very, very audible about Indian accents is the retroflexing of the tongue. So like that's the difference between dog and dog. The front of their tongue is curling back.
Dog.
When it hits dog.
Hello. Oh, go to the dog.
So like here's your tongue has to curl all the way back, and then the bottom of your tongue is touching the top of your mouth when it releases it. Dog.
Dog. Okay. Dog.
It's dog.
Would you like a dog? I thought it was
sir, your tongue is still too forward.
Would you like a dog? Dog. Dog.
You'd have to practice. It helps to listen to an example and then try to imitate it on and then listen to yourself on recording. Rolling your R's is there's code switching involved, but you basically you have to have more tension in the front of your mouth than when you're English, less tension in the back, higher rate of airflow, which is the trickiest part for English speakers, I think, and enough to relaxation in the back of your tongue for it to actually flutter.
Yeah, I can only roll my R's after a plosive, like brogue. I have to have that plosive in order to get it ramped up. Mm-hmm. I can't do it outside of that.
Yeah, it's tricky. If I try to go right between them, you try it. Arrocita. Or alrededor. Arroba. My name is Sierra.
Wow.
I won't repeat it in case somebody wants to save it. Unless
you know what? If I wanted to be sexier, I'd figure out how to roll my R's. I think that's probably one of the best sounds out there.
You like it?
It's got that trill. Yeah. It's a good one.
Especially once you can sustain it. You just like motorcycle mode. in a pinch, you could do the French R, which is in the back. They're less fond of motorboat mode, I found.
Well, is that your experience? I've had mixed results too.
It doesn't my experience right up until the mastectomy. It's much harder after the top surgery to do motorboat mode. I know. I went there.
Oh, jeez.
They grow back. Is it the same? Is it really the same? Well, you get the wee little chonkies, as one gender surgeon referred to the nipples. Did you see that episode?
Wait, what? Wheel chalkies?
Dr. Gallagher. She teaches Gallagher designer nipples. She'll take your nipple, she'll cut it off, and then she'll get a little scissors and she'll like shape it and pick, and then she'll cut another piece off to be the nipple, and like shape that, and then she refers to those as her wee little chonkies. And she talks about how like, oh yeah, and so then we pick up our wee little chonkies, and we pick out our favorites. Like obviously, of course, that's what you would do. You just go to the tray of the meat chunks and you pick out your favorite. Stitch them right on.
Wee little chonkies.
Wee little chonkies.
Oh, okay.
Cause the wee little chonkies come up for me.
I don't know how you subject yourself. The medical stuff is a little too intense for me.
It's funny. It's funny. These people are dead serious.
I know. I just deal in broken spirits, not mutilated bodies.
That's what Christopher Hitchens said, that he liked talking to religious fundamentalists because you just never know what they're going to say next. They're trying to make their irrational belief system rational. It's funny. It's like watching an adult chase their own tail. And catch it. And they're really proud of themselves.
Yeah. And then they trot it out on a TED Talk.
Have you seen that one where the dog catches his own leg and then tries to carry it?
No.
And he's like walking with like his 3 legs and his other legs in his mouth. And
it's like something my younger cat would do. He's not quite dog.
Yeah, I've got a cat dog too. He chases his tail. I've taught him to do some tricks. So he shakes and he sits and stuff.
Oh, really?
He's a Maine Coon also, so he's huge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you want to see? I can probably go find him.
Yeah, find your Maine Coon. Is his name Wee Little Chonky? Hello and welcome to Conversations. If you enjoyed it, do be sure to leave a review or a comment or a thumbs up or whatever you need to do to show that glorious algorithm that this is some good stuff. And do be sure to go and check that back catalog, as it is brimming full of fantastic conversations. Links to provide monetary support are down there in the description as well. Have a good night.